How am I able to shut down the system when I don't have SeShutdown privilege? Users in Windows can be granted various privileges. Privileges determine the type of system operations that a user account can perform. An administrator assigns privileges to user and group accounts. Each user's privileges include those granted to the user and to the groups to which the user belongs. There are currently 35 privileges. Some of the more interesting ones are: SeShutdownPrivilege, required to modify the system time. SeTimeZone privilege, required to adjust the time zone associated with the computer's internal clock. SeBackup privilege, this privilege causes the system to grant all read access control to any file, regardless of the access control list, specified for the file. SeCreate page file privilege, required to create a paging file. SeRemote shutdown privilege, required to shut down a system using a network request. SeDebug privilege, required to debug and adjust the memory of a process owned by another account. But the one I'm interested in is SeShutdown privilege, required to shut down a local system. I notice that I don't actually have this privilege. From an elevated command prompt, this is confirmed when using Process Explorer to examine the security token of an elevated process running as me. And yet I can shut down the system. Why? The group policy says I should have it. If you use the local security policy editor snapin, sepal.mse, you can see that I should have the privilege. sepal.msc. Security settings. Local policies. User rights assignment. Shut down the system. The explanation of the privilege. Shut down the system. This security setting determines which users who are logged on locally to the computer can shut down the operating system using the shutdown command. Misuse of this user right can result in a denial of service. Default on workstations, administrators, backup operators, users. Default on servers, administrators, backup operators. Default on domain controllers, administrators, backup operators, server operators, print operators. I'm a user. Sometimes I'm an administrator, and other times I'm a node administrator. Perhaps the question should be, why don't I have the privilege? But the reality is that I don't have the privilege, and yet when locally logged then I can shut down the local system. Why? Merdad had a good answer, that he deleted, which I think deserves attention and answers the question nicely and succinctly. You have the privilege? It's merely disabled by default. If you didn't have the privilege then it wouldn't be listed at all. Notice that say_privilege removed is different from lacking say_privilege enabled or say_privilege enabled by default. Bonus reading. MSDN, privilege constants. TechNet, shut down the system, user right assignment.
You have the permission, but it is disabled. That's what PowerShell is telling you. To shut down system, you use the Win32 API function called initiate system shutdown or exit Windows X. These functions note: to shut down the local computer, the calling thread must have the SeShutdown_name privilege. By default, users can enable the SeShutdown_name privilege on the computer they are logged onto, and administrators can enable the remote_shutdown_name privilege on remote computers. As you can see, Windows checks thread privileges. Any thread has token with privileges. If you call exit Windows X without the SeShutdown_name privilege, the function will fail with the error. Threads that you create by default inherit your privileges, but a program can enable a disabled privilege that it has been granted using a just token privileges. Changing privileges in a token says: a just token privileges cannot add or remove privileges from the token. It can only enable existing privileges that are currently disabled or disable existing privileges that are currently enabled. So, why is this privilege disabled by default? To make sure that no program can shut down Windows by accident, applications should ask for this explicitly. There is an ancient but very good book, this URL about all that stuff.
It's because your user belongs to a group that has that privilege enabled. To see for yourself which groups, open a PowerShell or command prompt as admin. Run sysedit/export/areas user_rights/cfg_outfile.cfg. View the contents of outfile.cfg in Notepad or alike, and look for the SeShutdownPrivilege entry. You should see a couple /few SIDs for users and or groups that have that privilege enabled. So I have 3 short SIDs listed. Short SIDs are usually computer level accounts/groups. For example, one of them is S15325545. Using PowerShell we can determine which account/group that SID represents. This returns built-in \users. Since you're a user on that computer, you're automatically a member of that group, meaning you can shut down the computer. The other 2 I have are S15325544 and S15325551. These are the standard built-in \administrators group and the built-in \backup operators group, which line up with the groups you're seeing in the secall.msc dialog.